Today I will be covering the Pinto Fires case. This will be my case recommendation for actions and consequences that could potentially arise from the Pinto's fire. The main people involved in this case were Henry Ford II, Lee Iacocca, as well as high-profile lawsuits that came from Richard Grimshaw in the 1972 case and the Indiana case of 1978, where there was 3 girls killed in a fire in a Ford Pinto. There was a few ethical concerns that I had as making my way through this case. My first one was a concern of judgment, how decisions were being made, and how it was being weighed, considering the lives of humans were in play. My second concern was a concern of greed, because they could have avoided a lot of problem and a lot of death and injuries and lawsuits if they chose to spend $11 more per fuel tank to have added safety measures around the fuel tank to prevent it from rupturing and exploding during a crash, especially at low level speeds. My third concern was that of leadership. It seems that these problems could have been prevented earlier. There was Henry Ford, who agreed with Lee Iacocca on attacking the small car market, making their own model, rolling it out as fast as possible, and then obviously once they got to the issues at hand, ignoring it and cutting corners and putting others in danger because of it. So with greed, some things that I noted were that Ford displayed severe greed when deciding whether to save money and cutting safety measures. Again, it only cost $11 per each Pinto manufactured that they could have spent just to save a lot of more lives, avoided reputation harm in the public eye to them because of their negligence, avoided lawsuits, avoided bad media, avoided pressure from the government and pressure from the public. But what stemmed into this greed was what Lee Iacocca said, that safety doesn't sell, something that he learned himself in a previous job of his or previous experience. So you can see where their mindset's at, as they're trying to make the most money, get the most profit for their sales, as well as just cut corners if they need to, because they need to make the most profit. They need to sell the most cars. They need to compete heavily with their competitors. The second ethical concern that I saw and some evidence was that they were displaying poor judgment multiple times. Early test of the Ford Pinto, which was 11 cars total, 8 of these cars had the standard fuel tank, 3 of them didn't, and those 3 had added safety measures. Those 3 were the only ones to survive the car crash test, especially at low speeds. They still chose to roll them out because they're already in too deep. They don't have enough time to keep reevaluating and start over. And once they rolled them out, the initial field reports on accidents were very poor. There was a lot of it being caused by the fuel tanks, and even initial reports, they continue to keep pumping them out, keep manufacturing them, keep selling them. And I believe they didn't concede until there was enough pressure from the public and the government. I believe that if no one said anything, if no one was putting pressure on them, whether it was lawsuits or government pressure, that they would have kept just manufacturing the same car that had this huge safety hazard without regard for the public. Some evidence against the leadership part of things was that Henry Ford II and Lee Iacocca are partly to blame for this case, just because they are at the top. They were the CEO and high-level managers, high-level leaders in the company. They chose to fast-track the Ford Pinto production and cut corners. Again, this negligence resulted in a significant number of fatalities and accidents and high-profile lawsuits that could have been easily prevented. And some things that I will mention on this evidence is that here we'll tie some chapter integration into it too. Again, they were greedy. They chose to lead unethically. And here is a quote from the book: "Miserliness and unethical business practices are considered part of a sin of greed." So Ford Motor got greedy with being competitive in a small car market and wanting to make the most profit margin. Again, they were probably still going to profit off this car, even with those added $11 per 1.5 million Pinto Fords. They probably still would have gotten a good return. And then also, the leader who acts ethically will ultimately succeed. The leader who lacks an ethical foundation will ultimately fail. It could be argued that Henry Ford II and Lee Iacocca were not acting ethically and therefore failed in the long run. Again, they could have avoided this if they would have acted ethically from the beginning. They might have seen profits right away, never gone to court, never had their public reputation harmed, and so forth. Some recommendations that I would make based on this case and what I would have done differently or what I would hope a company would do differently is that Ford Motor Company needs to focus less on profits and more on the value they can give their customers, the value that they're bringing their customers, and in turn that'll result in them still being profitable without causing any harm to anyone of their customers. Ford Motor needs to evaluate their decision-making process. Not everything is cut and dry when it comes to dealing with human life and safety. They should have recalled cars sooner and stopped when they saw negative testing results. Again, they saw negative results in the testing with the 11 cars. They saw negative initial field results, and they chose to continue and not recall the cars just to keep making more money. Again, they could have stopped that sooner, saved lives, saved maybe that case of the kid Richard Grimshaw. Maybe he wouldn't have died if they would have stopped sooner. And then some of the manager leaders at Ford Motor Company need to consider what their values and morals are to begin with and what kind of company culture they want to build and maintain. So if the employees of Ford are seeing Henry and Iacocca make these kinds of decisions, they're like, you know what, we still got to make the most money. Yes, this might be a hazard, but let's proceed. What are the employees going to take away from that, and how will they act in turn of that? With that culture being instilled. So some possible consequences if they chose to, act differently. We could have seen a different positive aftermath if Ford would have chosen to act sooner, i.e., recalling all the cars right away or never even coming out of them after they saw the bad test results. Ford would have been seen a greater benefit to their consumer base if they would have thought about bringing value instead of competing. I believe that with our loyal customer base they already had, they could have built upon that, just bring a affordable small market car that's safe, regardless of the trunk size. They would have seen better benefit to them long term. Also, thinking decisions through by decentralizing the decision making process, so they could see others' perspectives in their high management chain and weigh their options better. Ford hired or fired the other guy who was competing against Iacocca, and he just wanted to keep competing in medium and large vehicles. So if there was other options they could have explored, and they might have chosen a different one instead of just, nope, this guy's right, let's go do it. They also if they had strong ethical leaders to improve company culture, they could prevent issues like this from happening or future issues with the same severity. Thank you.